There are three certainties in life: death, taxes, and a passive-aggressive letter from your homeowners association that somehow feels like it was written by a smiley face holding a knife. I'm Jack Riley, and I live in a beige-colored slice of suburban paradise called Prestigious Meadows, which is hilarious, because the only thing prestigious around here is how aggressively people judge the shade of your mailbox. If you ever wanted to feel personally attacked by the concept of taupe-adjacent ecru, congratulations, this is your place. I'm a software engineer, so I work from home, meaning I spend my days in caffeinated seclusion with a laptop, a second monitor, and the quiet hum of machines that actually do what they're told. I like order. I like systems. I like rules that make sense. Which is why when my wife Sarah and I bought this house, I signed the HOA documents like a confident idiot skimmed the CC and RS, that phone book-sized novel of misery, and thought, how bad can it be? It's a contract. I understand contracts. In my head, it was a fair trade. Don't paint your house like a Jackson Pollock fever dream, and we'll make sure your neighbor doesn't install a 10-foot animatronic flamingo in his front yard. Reasonable, balanced, civilized. Then there was Brenda. I hadn't met her in person for years, but I knew her deeply, intimately, through her monthly newsletter, Brenda's Beacon, which was basically a masterclass in weaponized pleasantries. It would start with a lemon bar recipe and end with a friendly reminder that trash cans left out more than 3 hours past pickup would result in fines, public shaming, and possibly a biblical plague, all punctuated by cheerful little smiley faces that felt less like friendliness and more like the bared teeth of a predator. One month she wrote, "A gentle nudge to our fellow residents, the approved list of garden gnomes is available on the community portal. Let's keep Prestigious Meadows looking prestigious, not pathetic." I didn't even own a gnome, but I felt an immediate, violent urge to buy the ugliest one I could find, something that looks like it crawled out of a truck stop. Still, for 5 years, I flew under Brenda's radar. My lawn was mowed, hedges trimmed, mailbox the correct shade of sadness. I was a model citizen of the meadows. And then one Tuesday a lilac envelope arrived. Not white, not cream, not professional adult mail. Lilac, the color of doom wearing lipstick. I opened it and found a brand new addendum, fresh off Brenda's printer, hot with tyranny. I read it out loud to Sarah while she was wrestling our 2 kids into shoes for school, and I tried to add the dramatic weight it deserved, like I was announcing the start of a war. To preserve the serene morning ambience of our community, I began all gas-powered landscaping activities, including but not limited to mowing, edging, and leaf blowing, are strictly prohibited before 10 a.m. and after 6 p.m. Sarah didn't even look up. "Okay, so mow on Saturday?" I stared at her like she'd just suggested we all start eating cereal with water. "You don't understand. This isn't about scheduling. My entire workflow is built around a 9:30 mowing session. I code from 6 to 9, clear my head with honest fossil fuel yard work, then get back to it. It's a ritual. It's mowing the lawn, Jack. It's a sacred ritual," I said, holding up the lilac paper like it was a declaration of war. "This is an attack on logic. In summer, 10 a.m. is basically noon. That's when the sun stops being a star and becomes an angry god." Sarah sighed, handed me a lunchbox like I was one of the kids, and said the sentence that every spouse says right before disaster. "Just don't get us kicked out of the neighborhood, okay?" I looked out at my perfect lawn, green, neat, compliant, and I swear it looked back like it was waiting for instructions. "No promises," I muttered. A week later, Texas weather did that rare thing where it behaves. Blue sky, low humidity, a breeze that felt like someone turned the world's fan on low. It was 9:45 a.m. on a Thursday. My grass had crossed the line from respectable to shaggy, and it was whispering to me, "Mow me, Jack. Defy the lilac tyranny." I cracked. "I'm doing it," I announced to the empty house, and I strode into the garage like a man storming a castle. My mower, trusty red Craftsman, sat there like an accomplice. I checked gas, checked oil, pulled the cord, and the engine roared to life with this glorious, deafening sound that shattered the serene morning ambience into a million beautiful pieces. 2 passes in, I was in a zone, fresh cut grass smell, gasoline in the air, satisfying straight lines, when I saw her. Brenda in the flesh, power walking toward my house in a neon pink tracksuit that could guide aircraft through fog. White visor pulled down like she was preparing for battle. She didn't stop across the street. She didn't shout from her driveway. No, she stopped directly on the sidewalk bordering my lawn, planted her hands on her hips, and stared at me like I'd just committed a crime against God and beige siding. Then she slowly, deliberately, pulled out her phone and took a photo. An evidence photo. I killed the engine, and the sudden silence felt louder than the mower ever did. "Morning, Brenda," I called, leaning on the handle with confidence I did not possess. "Beautiful day for civic oversight." Her voice was exactly what I imagined, crisp, condescending, and somehow cold even in warm weather. It was a beautiful morning, Jack, until it was filled with the cacophony of internal combustion. "It's 9:48. You received the lilac addendum, I presume." "I did," I said, wiping sweat. "I thought it was more of a strong suggestion. A guideline." "The CC and RS are not suggestions," she replied, eyes narrowing. "They are the bedrock of this community and our property values. Expect a notice of violation. $50. She turned on her heel and marched away, leaving me standing there with half a mowed lawn and the faint smell of rebellion evaporating into the morning. By the time I got inside, the notice was already in the mailbox, on lilac paper, of course with a time-stamped photo of me next to my mower, red-faced like a suburban felon. Sarah saw it that night and did the long, weary sigh of a woman married to a man who thinks principle is a food group. "Just pay the 50, Jack. It's not worth it." "No," I said, voice low. "This isn't about money. This is about tyranny, and you can't fight a stupid rule with logic. You fight it with bigger, better stupidity." That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat in the glow of my laptop and fell into the most unhinged research session of my life. HOA loopholes, malicious compliance, legal ways to annoy your neighbor's stuff that makes you pause and think, maybe I should start therapy instead. That's when I found the idea. Goats. Not kidding, goats as lawnmowers. Quiet. Natural. Absurd. And most importantly, not gas-powered. I pulled up the CC and RS and searched every page. Fence height, shed placement, satellite dishes, exact paint colors, zero mention of livestock. Then I checked city ordinances, dogs, cats, nuisance clauses, nothing about goats specifically. A loophole with hooves. I ran into the bedroom, flipped on the light, and Sarah groaned into her pillow like she already knew the shape of my insanity. "Honey," I said, buzzing with excitement, "I found a sustainable landscaping solution, eco-friendly. Quiet also, it's going to make Brenda short-circuit." Sarah squinted with one eye. "Oh no, what did you do?" "I haven't done it yet," I said, grinning. "Hypothetical question. How do you feel about goats?" Finding a goat seller online is easier than you'd think. Finding one who doesn't ask questions that takes Craigslist energy. I found an ad between rusty tractors and free roosters. Goats for mowing, good eaters, no questions asked, cash only. The seller's name was Jebediah, which felt less like a name and more like a warning. The next day, I drove 45 minutes out of suburbia into real countryside, cracked pavement, gravel roads, air that smelled like manure and freedom. Jebediah's farm had a leaning barn, a truck on cinder blocks, and fences held together by optimism and baling wire. Jebediah himself looked like he'd been carved out of sun and suspicion. "You the fella from the city?" he asked, not offering a handshake. "That's me," I said. "Hear about the landscaping equipment." "The goats," he grunted, spitting tobacco juice dangerously close to my running shoes. "HOA, huh? Had a guy buy a rooster from me once for revenge. Woke the whole neighborhood at 4 a.m. HOA president near had a stroke. You gonna start something you can't finish?" "I finish things," I said, which is funny because my idea of finishing things usually involves spreadsheets. I picked 5 goats based on pure vibe. One wiry escape artist I named Houdini. One big shaggy, one whose bleat sounded like a Wookiee so obviously Chewbacca. A dignified bearded, one I called Sir Reginald, a cranky female goat who looked perpetually offended, so Brenda. And a plain white one named Snowball, because I ran out of creativity. 5 goats, 500 cash, plus a rusty livestock trailer rental. I drove home with that trailer rattling behind my SUV like a medieval war machine. Goats bleating, my hands locked on the steering wheel, and a giddy, terrified smile I could not remove. I pulled into my driveway after dark, killed the headlights a block away like I was on a covert mission, then the moment I stopped, the goats unleashed a chorus of confused bleats that basically screamed, "Hello suburbia, we're here to destroy your vibe." Sarah stood in the doorway, arms crossed, wearing the expression of someone choosing love through sheer force of will. "You actually did it," she said flatly. "You brought barnyard animals to prestigious meadows." "I brought a sustainable landscaping solution," I corrected. "Think of the carbon credits, we're heroes." I got them into the backyard, thank God for a solid privacy fence, and the first day was chaos and triumph mixed together like a bad cocktail. They mowed constantly, also produced a truly spiritual amount of poop. Like I did not know 5 animals could generate that many pellets. My yard became a minefield. At 3:17 a.m., Chewbacca let out a soul-shaking bleat that made me sit bolt upright thinking we were being haunted by a demon with allergies. And they ate everything. Not just grass, Sarah's rose bush, a wicker chair, an Amazon box, and at one point I caught Sir Reginald chewing a corner of the vinyl siding like it was a light snack. Still coffee in hand the next morning, watching them work, I felt victorious. 0 gas. 0 10 a.m. rule compliance. Pure loophole energy. My next-door neighbor Dave, chill-bearded graphic designer who hated the HOA in a quiet, healthy way, stepped outside, saw the goats, froze for 10 seconds, then started clapping slowly like he'd just witnessed art. "Dude," he said, eyes wide, "this is the most glorious, magnificent, utterly insane thing I've ever seen. Brenda is going to have an aneurysm." "From your lips to the universe," I said. On the other side, Mr. Henderson, the neighborhood hall monitor in human form, was already on his phone, scowling like he was calling the Pentagon. Brenda found out around 8 a.m. the next morning. I saw neon pink from a block away, power walking like a drill sergeant. Her gaze drifted into my backyard, and she stopped dead. I watched her face cycle through confusion, disbelief, rage, and then that cold, hard acceptance of war. By 10:30, a thicker lilac envelope was taped to my door. Multi-page violations, unsanctioned livestock, auditory nuisance, failure to maintain aesthetic harmony fine, $200. So I called her. "Brenda speaking," she answered, clipped. "Hi Brenda, Jack Riley. Got your fan mail. Quick question. What specific bylaw covers goat-based horticulture? Because I read the CC and RS cover to cover, real page turner, and I can't find the goat section." "You know what you're doing," she hissed. "This is a residential community, not a petting zoo. They're a nuisance." My husband heard one of them praying at night. "That's Chewbacca," I said calmly. Deep baritone. Still quieter than my mower. She hung up. An hour later, a police car rolled up. 2 officers, Sergeant Miller, tired eyes, and Officer Davies, young and trying not to smile. I led them to the backyard, where Chewbacca was standing on a plastic lawn chair like he paid rent. Sergeant Miller sighed. "Sir, is there a city ordinance against this?" "Not specifically," I said, handing him my printed ordinance notes like I was presenting evidence in court. "They're contained, not a public health risk legal gray area." Brenda stood across the street, arms crossed, radiating fury. Sergeant Miller called out, "Ma'am, it's a civil issue. Nothing criminal here." Officer Davies gave me a subtle thumbs up on the way back to the car, like good luck, goat guy. And for about a week, I felt unstoppable. Then Brenda escalated. Certified mail from a law firm with a name that sounded like a joke, threatening liens, daily fines, court-real grown-up consequences. Sarah read it and went pale. "Jack, this has gone too far." And that's when I realized something uncomfortable. Brenda wasn't just annoyed. She was used to winning. People like her survive on the fact that most folks would rather pay $50 than fight back, because peace is easier than principle. And honestly, most of the time, they're right. But I was in too deep also. The goats were now emotionally mine. So I doubled down. If they were calling my goats a nuisance, I was going to make them the most responsibly housed livestock in suburban history. I called a contractor named Gus, big beard, bigger attitude, and showed him my sketch. "A 2-story goat house," he repeated slowly, staring. "With a sun deck." "Exactly," I said. "Permitted. Up to code. Legally flawless." He stared at me, then at the goats trying to eat his truck tires, and then cracked a grin. "For the right price, I'd build a jacuzzi for pigeons. Let's do it." The construction turned my backyard into a spectacle. Neighbors wandered over like we were hosting a circus. Dave brought beers. Mr. Henderson complained about the noise, which was dismissed because the work happened after 10 a.m., ironically complying with Brenda's precious rule. Even the city inspector stamped the permit with a tired smile. "Well, never seen one of these before. Have fun with your goat condo." When it was finished, oh man. It was beautiful, wooden chalet, shingles, ramp, little deck, my magnum opus. I branded a sign above the door, Casa de la Chevra. Dave posted photos on the neighborhood Facebook page. Sir Reginald posed majestically on the sun deck, Houdini peering through a window. Caption: "They're homeowners now." The post went nuclear. Team Brenda screamed about property values and fear for their children, which was hilarious because my goats were about as threatening as a throw pillow. Team Goat, people who'd quietly hated Brenda for years, came out of the woodwork. Jack Riley for HOA president. This is the hero we didn't know we needed. Can my kid do a biology report on Sir Reginald? Then came the twist I didn't see coming, local news. A reporter named Maria Sanchez showed up with a camera crew, because apparently suburban goat warfare is what we've become as a society. She interviewed me on my lawn while the cameraman got B-roll of Chewbacca chewing something he shouldn't. I framed it as sustainability, logic, absurdity as protest David versus beige Goliath. Maria loved it. Then she interviewed Brenda across the street, and Brenda, God bless her, did exactly what Brenda always does: tight rage, rigid smile, talking about standards and investments like she was defending democracy. Right on cue, Chewbacca let out a perfectly timed mournful bleat that echoed down the street like a punchline. The segment aired at 6. I became the goat guy. People drove by to take pictures. Dave started a GoFundMe for my goat legal defense fund, and it raised over $1,000 in a day from strangers who clearly had HOA trauma. Brenda was humiliated and furious. So she called an emergency HOA meeting to pass an anti-goat amendment, ban non-domesticated agricultural or unconventional animals. The showdown was set. That Thursday, the clubhouse was packed, like a high school dance with factions. Team Brenda on the right, arms crossed. Team Goat on the left, buzzing like they'd come to watch a cage match. Brenda stood at the podium and played a PowerPoint of blurry goat droppings and declining serene ambience, charts like she was presenting evidence of a felony. Then it was my turn. I walked up with a binder, photos, ordinances, signatures. Sarah helped me rehearse. Dave rallied support. I said, "Look, yes, on the surface, this is ridiculous. But it's not about goats. It's about a rule so arbitrary that absurdity became the only logical response." Brenda tried to cut me off. "Your time is up, Jack, we need to vote." And that's when I pulled out my real weapon. "Just one more thing," I said, unfolding an old plat map I'd dug up from county records. According to the original zoning documents filed in 1978, Prestigious Meadows is zoned semi-rural agricultural. It was never legally rezoned. The room went quiet, then erupted into murmurs. I looked right at Brenda, who had gone pale. So technically we're all living on a farm. Pandemonium. The anti-goat amendment failed, loudly. Then Dave stood up, grinning like the devil, and motioned for a vote to repeal the 10 a.m. mowing rule. It passed. Brenda resigned within the month and put her house up for sale, like a villain retreating from the battlefield. A quiet retired accountant named George took over, and suddenly the neighborhood felt lighter. Less afraid of lilac paper. The goats became minor celebrities. Kids fed them carrots through the fence. My lawn, however, looked like it had been through a small war, because it had. And somewhere in all of that, I had this weird, late-night realization: power doesn't always come from being right. It comes from people being too tired to argue. Brenda wasn't strong because her rules made sense. She was strong because everyone complied to keep the peace. The minute one person finally said, "No, actually," the whole illusion cracked. Not because I'm some hero. Trust me, I'm a guy who once got excited about a color-coded spreadsheet. But because bullies, even suburban ones, depend on silence. The moment you make their control look ridiculous, everyone suddenly remembers they've been annoyed for years. Eventually, I sent the goats back. They'd done their job. Jebediah came with his rattling trailer, smirked when he heard the outcome, and said, "Heard you won your war." "We won the battle," I corrected, scratching Chewbacca behind the ears one last time. Team effort. As the trailer pulled away, Sarah wrapped an arm around my waist and stared at the poop-fertilized patchy mess that used to be our yard. "So you'll be needing that lawn mower again." The next Saturday was cool and clear. At exactly 9:45 a.m., I rolled my red Craftsman out, pulled the cord, engine roared to life not as defiance anymore, but as something like freedom. A $50 fine had turned into a legend, a resignation, and a neighborhood that finally remembered it could vote. And I smiled, pushing the mower forward, cutting my lines straight, on my time, because sometimes karma doesn't show up as thunder and lightning. Sometimes it shows up as 5 goats, a public meeting, and a woman in a neon tracksuit realizing her little kingdom was never as solid as she thought. Now here's the question. When someone like Brenda is enforcing rules that feel more like control than community, what's the line between standing up for yourself and becoming the chaos you hate? And if you've ever dealt with an HOA, a power-tripping manager, or anyone who weaponizes rules, drop your story in the comments. Tell me where you think justice ends and petty revenge begins, and whether you would have paid the 50 or bought the goats.